This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Fan.
Number 2 of the Bumper to Bumper program. Luigi will join us. Garzi tells me by phone at 5:30. He's back from the old country, right? He's back from the continent.
I think he's even in town.
Oh, he might even be in town.
Must have an important dinner or
but
something.
He's not coming to see us. That hurts. Well, he's been in pretty recently. It's hard to, I guess, complain too much. And he might be a little tired. You know, long trip like that. Are you kidding me?
For real.
How difficult it is to travel to those destinations.
I don't. Well, one day I'll hopefully let Louie know.
Somewhere down the road, eh? So Louie is scheduled for 5:30 this evening. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open as per usual at 64686. There is a hockey subject I want to explore even before he joins us. There's an interesting piece from your guy, Richard Deitch, who writes about media stuff for The Athletic, right, in the New York Times?
Yes.
It's all put together.
Just did a podcast with Cheryl Reeve about a week ago.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was very interesting. Been listening to it the last few days.
By the way, it looks like are we in the Commissioner's Cup?
If we beat Vegas
One
tonight,
more win, yeah.
We are in the championship round. It would be, yeah.
It would be the Liberty. Good showdown game. We didn't, yesterday was obviously, we were preoccupied with A-section tragedy, but how about the Caitlin Clark Saturday afternoon?
Oh, did she come back? I missed it. Did she come back?
I have a new theory. I have a new Caitlin Clark theory I want to run by you maybe a little bit later in this program.
I'll be ready.
But, yeah, she came back. That was her first game back, as we discussed on Enough Said, and it was against the Liberty. And, of course, she was hitting shots from midcourt, which...
Plural.
Yes, several shots. That's exactly it. Almost to the point where I think there were a couple of Liberty players who were kind of chuckling, weren't they?
Stewie, your gal Stewie. I was just looking at a comment she had today talking about, I think they must play again today. Yeah, they play Atlanta tonight. So at the shoot-around, she just goes, I'm glad that people think I'm like this great sport. Because people are like, it looks like it was good sportsmanship. She's like, well, no, sometimes you just react because it's so stupid.
In the moment, right.
How ridiculous she is.
As Deitch writes, well, here's the headline. Why are so few people watching the Stanley Cup final in the U.S.? Deitch mentions that you've got, obviously, star power, starting with a guy by the name of Connor McDavid, right?
Pretty good.
Not a bad...
He's box office.
Puck player, one would say. You've had several outstanding games, right?
Yes.
Were the first two in OT?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
There were at least two OT ones, I think. We've had a number of... We've had a couple of dramatic late goals to send games into OT. We've had some very good action back and forth. Now it may be that's just the Panthers series. We'll find out tonight on the Fan, correct? Game number 6 is tonight on the Fan, and obviously Florida can end it tonight. And in Canada, by the way... He writes that the country is riveted to this Stanley Cup final. Through 5 games, the Cup final is averaging 3.8 million viewers on Sportsnet and CBC. And as he says, keep in mind that the population of Canada is just 41.7 million. So the number of basically 4 million is pretty significant. However, in the US of A, here are the Stanley Cup viewership numbers for the first 4 games. This is on both TNT and True TV. Game 1, 2.4 million. Game 2, 2.5. Game 3, 2.3. Game 4, 2.6.
Well, see you later.
Game 1, the least watched Cup final opener since the COVID-delayed Canadiens Lightning on NBCSN in 2021. If you can exclude the 2 COVID-altered seasons, it was the least watched Game 1 since 2008. And again, he mentions, and we just suggested as well, it hasn't been boring hockey. 39 goals, the most through 5 games of a championship series in 15 years. 3 of the 5 finals have been A-plus games, as good as we've seen in the Cup finals over the last 2 decades. And they kind of lay that sort of thing out. And then he mentions the numbers from last year's Cup. Same 2 teams, right? Every game 1 was 3.12, game 2, 3.56, 3.4, 3.1. So we're down 25% over a year ago. And everybody's offering theories on what this is about, including the fact that you make this move from broadcast to cable. And the 2023 Stanley Cup Final represented the first all-cable Stanley Cup Final in 29 years. A longtime broadcast executive who was given anonymity to speak freely told me regular season NHL games on ABC did 3 times the viewership of games on TNT. The NHL made a trade it must live with for the years Turner Sports delivers the Cup Final. And the trade-off was more money from Turner Sports, $225 million annually over the reach of a network such as NBC, which was offering less annually. Money usually wins here. Among the other theories offered, not enough casual fans are even aware that TNT is airing the final. Diehard fans will search out where games air, but it's worth remembering that the NHL and TNT is still a relatively new partnership. Having just one U.S. media market is a killer. What would Dallas have been worth as opposed to Edmonton as far as viewership? An unnamed executive believed it would be worth at least an additional 500,000 viewers on average per game. Markets matter in TV. So now again, I think NBA ratings are down. Are they not? I don't know how considerably, but they're definitely down so far.
But the numbers are like 7 or 8 million watching that, I think, right?
So are we back to... Because it does sound like if these numbers are true, we're learning again, and this is, I guess, the trade-off that every league has to deal with, and it's something we will reintroduce with Louis, is it, in the end, are you going to go with the money, or are you going to go with the exposure? Because I have to believe executives around the league knew what they were potentially giving up in exposure. But it's an interesting trade-off. There's an interesting question about, what if you go all the way back to when the first time they left ESPN the first time, I remember us talking about this, and I understood why they did it, but I always thought it was a bad move just from an exposure standpoint. But I guess what's weird to me is I thought by now we're so cable-driven anymore that, and TNT is so established that it wouldn't have the impact that apparently, according to these numbers, as quoted by Deitch, they do in terms of bringing the numbers down to a much lower level than that even hockey has previously had. As a sport that's still more of a niche sport,
right?
But still, these aren't numbers. These are numbers that pale in comparison to what the NHL was able to do over commercial network.
I am surprised by it, because it's also never been easier to find it via streaming, which I assume it's on Max.
Correct.
I assume a lot of people are watching that. I don't know what those numbers, if we'll get more people watching on Max, if those get added into it later. Because the other thing that we've talked about forever, and my favorite sport just had this happen, just had their whole French Open on TNT. It was a massive win for them. The ratings were the other way, through the roof.
Interesting.
Because it's usually on Tennis Channel, which is even much more niche-y.
Right.
And you had the Bleacher Report angle, and like everything TNT does, they do it right. The crew on
French Open Final used to be wasn't on NBC?
NBC, yes,
okay.
But for the whole tournament.
I see. From the beginning,
the whole 2 weeks.
Yes,
people were talking about it every morning. It seemed like, because it was on TNT, and I wonder, because the product they're putting out there, I think, is great. Obviously, having Gretzky is big.
Yeah,
Biz is awesome. Having Henrik Lundqvist, having Nansen Carter. Yeah. The host is good. Like, if you're watching it, it's a great presentation. TNT always does it right. But that number does surprise me, that it's 25% lower than it was even a year ago. And you also have the Edmonton story, for me, is enough to just get into it. because of the, no Canadian teams wanted him forever. Can McDavid finally do it? Having Gretzky in Edmonton, watching McDavid, I think is epic. So they should have enough storylines to have a little bit more people, but it's also the same sport. I was stunned, Dan, when Alex Ovechkin was breaking Gretzky's record, and that was like every day, everywhere, right? Sports Center, yes. Any sports program was talking about the race. The Gretzkys are following the Capitals all over the country. 1.8 million people, I think, watched that game, which I think was on a weekend. 1.8. I'm pretty sure is the number. Doesn't that strike? That says a lot.
Half of Caitlin Clark preseason game rating.
But that says a lot to me. That the record that nobody thought was ever going to get broken.
Yeah, you're right.
It was in our conscience for the better part of 2 weeks. 1.8 million people watched it, I think.
A number of theories are coming in. The hockey community is coming alive, so we'll get to some reaction. Louis will join at 5:30. Top 5 at 5 yet to... When's the last time the University of Minnesota was in the College World Series? You know how far back that goes?
Wasn't it the Winfield year?
Was that literally the last one? Because that's the one that always gets the most attention.
Yeah.
And they blew the late lead. Was it like a 7 or 8 run lead in the 9th?
To USC.
He had pitched... Dan Winnesota had sent us an anniversary on that just within the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
And what struck me about it, I meant to get to it and didn't, is that Winfield, as I recall the stat, and if he's listening, he can send it again to me, had thrown 165 pitches. 165. Because he started the 9th, I think he even got one out, but then he gave up a couple of hits. And the obvious concern was, well, there's limits, to how many pitches even then you're going to go to. And then it was a series of relief pitchers, and we ended up blowing, was it a 7 or 8 run lead? I think in the 9th inning. I'll find it, or Dan Winnesota can send it again. I just had that in my mind because on the screen on ESPN, it's a...
I think it was a 7-run lead.
It was a 7-run lead?
Yeah, we were up 7 rip. 1970. So I don't think that was the last one.
Okay. I thought we had been there more recently than that.
But not much more recently if gophersports.com is
accurate?
Be believed. 1977. Lost
That's
to
a long time.
Cal State Los Angeles. I don't know if that's the same as UCLA.
Cal State Fullerton?
No.
Oh, Cal State Los Angeles. Sorry.
Beat Baylor and then lost to Arizona State.
I see. Unfortunately, now with Max, they recently made sports content only accessible on their higher tier package.
That's a problem.
Standard level streaming will no longer get you live sports. It is. It's so complicated now. This doesn't explain the year-by-year decline, but it is June, Dan. By the time this is done, it'll be closer to the 4th of July than Memorial Day. Except for the diehards who care about hockey. Who cares about hockey in the middle of the summer? This should have been wrapped up 3 weeks ago. Of course, this does not address your question at all, but does feel good to rant. That's from Dr. Mike.
Well, I do think June 17th, I do think that might have something to do with it.
Yeah.
Not all of it, but for some people.
Well, I guess basketball is the same in that regard, right? Feels like it's because as you said, Game 7 would be June 22nd if the series is extended to 7. By the way, it appears the Halliburton situation
not good.
Does not seem good. Although he played badly, or just again couldn't score last game. Maybe it's a distinction without a difference regarding whether he's actually available at this point. But the Pacers will be challenged, I think, to extend the series. I'm never going to rule them out, but I think they'll be challenged to extend the series past 6, even though that's at home. No one gives a rip about hockey in the middle of June. It's not rocket science, Dan. This is from Gina in Bemidji. It's not an American sport. And that puts it immediately behind the 8 ball, writes Tom. In addition to that, most of the big stars are Canadian. I think this stuff matters to people more than we know. Dan, the U.S. Open had 5.4 million viewers on Sunday without a top player even finishing in the top 5. That's Chad from Andover.
That was on NBC, I believe, right? It usually
I believe
is,
so, yes.
Which also matters.
Maybe it has something to do with there being a Florida team in the finals for a 6th straight year. And on a related note, same teams as last year, too. Maybe viewers are bored with not seeing different teams. Rick in Sioux Falls, I have Fubo streaming. They don't carry TNT.
Right.
I would have loved to watch it, but was not going to buy another subscription to watch. Don't know if others had this issue. Dan, this is from Charlie in Bemidji, in the U.S. somewhere near the Canadian border, get the CBC's main channel on basic TV packages. I don't know how this might affect the viewership numbers, but I've long preferred the CBC's hockey broadcasts. For the record, the same goes for the Olympics. Much, much less fluff in favor of the games themselves. This is from, is that 763? Yes. Good God, another day listening to Dan trash hockey. NHL living rent-free in Dan's head. Please, Dan, share the NBA viewership. He won't, because it's his cute little sport. Please replace him with Fallness, because nobody cares what Dan thinks.
What would a Fallness afternoon drive show look like?
I have no idea, but didn't we already mention that the
NBA numbers
are down pretty considerably? Yeah. And by the way, I'm in the group that does not want to dismiss a sporting event on that basis, right? Whether it's the markets that are involved or whatever, whether the sport is hockey or basketball. That's why we brought up the number of good games there have been in the hockey tournament, shall we say. It's part of the deal.
It's been an awesome final.
Yes. Well, until it isn't. I mean, it may be now Florida's just ready to run away with it.
The only game that wasn't good was the one with all the fights.
Well, yeah.
Which was stupid. But every other game has been pretty compelling.
But the last game was pretty one-sided, was it not? Wasn't Game 5? What was the final? I don't think they came back
Florida
as much in Game 5. Yeah.
Florida handled it pretty well.
Dan, echoing what you've already said, the NHL has continually taken the shorthand cash over doing the long-term decision that's better overall. Hell, they signed a TV contract with the Outdoor Network /Versus.
Versus, yeah.
Huh?
I was trying to remember who it was. It was Versus.
Hockey ratings for the Four Nations and Stanley Cup last year were stellar in the U.S. on ABC. Cord cutting is real, and TNT is in millions of less homes than ABC. Yeah, I guess we're learning that. And then a lot of these relationships that I don't even begin to understand. Well, you got a Max package, but it doesn't include the TNT part, and you don't have another place where you're going to add TNT.
Right.
All of that does make this so much more complicated and problematic for people.
And it's only getting more complicated.
Yes, that's right.
Think about what you have to do for the NFL this year. Everything that you have to have for the NFL. If you wanted to get every game for sure.
Well, let me ask you, this is a question I'm going to get into with Louie, too. Are we kidding ourselves a little bit on, because the working assumption has always been, whatever sport you're talking about, to grow the sport, you want to expose as many people as possible to that sport if they are inclined to try it, right? And so therefore, you're always better off going with the bigger network. Is it possible that the NHL is governed not just by greed, but by a belief deep down that, you know what, we don't like talking about this, but we are a niche sport. And there are limits. We could do all these surveys that even if we're on ABC or NBC or whatever, it's just we are going to be what we are, and we can't worry about it because it's a good product. The people who are into it are into it. And so we are going to try to take our money, and then we're going to try to be inventive and creative where we can be. But we've got a really good coverage on TNT. By all accounts, it's a good quality coverage. And let's stop pretending that if we're on every TV in America, that necessarily suddenly hockey would become as popular as basketball.
Yeah.
That we know that's just not true because there's not the built-in across the country I'm talking about, interest at the grassroots level in this sport compared to some others.
Not yet, right? But when you think about, wasn't it just in the last 30-ish years that teams started popping up in non-traditional locations?
There's no question. So that was what expansion was all about.
You're probably still in the infancy, maybe not the infancy, but the teenage years of what the league might be, because you do have to have some grassroots growth. You do have to have teams go on runs, and then all of a sudden youth teams start popping up. College hockey players and pro hockey players are popping up from all over the country,
right? More
so than ever, right? That wasn't 50 years ago. It was Canada, Minnesota, Michigan, and Massachusetts, basically, right?
All right.
It was those spots. So it's a little bit glacial, probably, the growth. And I'm assuming because whatever the percentage is that goes back to the players, they're fine with them taking the TV deals. Like we always talk about, the salary cap needs to go up. Well, what do you need for the salary cap to go up? You need money. You need
true.
revenue.
You're
and
right,
so I don't blame them necessarily for taking the biggest check all the time.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. Lots more good texts on this subject. We may explore a couple of other things here before we hit the top 5 at 5. And we'll probably get back to this, among other things, with Louie as he helps us preview Game 6 Stanley Cup Finals. Could wrap up this very evening right here in the Fan. June 7, 1973. Southern Cal, college basketball's defending national champion, clubbed 3 Minnesota pitchers for 8 runs in the 9th inning Tuesday night to defeat the Gophers 8-7 and eliminate them from the College World Series. Now, if I'm doing my math right, that means the Gophers were up 7-0.
Yeah.
The Trojans spree nullified a superb performance by Minnesota starter David Winfield, who had shut out the Californians on 1 hit, a weak grounder to short in the 6th inning, and had struck out 15. Winfield, pitching with 3 days rest, had thrown 165 pitches going into the fatal 9th. Obvious he was tiring badly. Trojans choked up on the bats, shortened their swings, and began, writes Larry Batson, Star Tribune staff writer, Dateline Omaha, Nebraska, to punch the ball. They got to Winfield for 2 singles with 1 out, and a Trojan named Fred Lynn, yes, that Freddie Lynn, hit the ball down the right field line. Gopher first baseman Chris Brown bobbled it. Then catcher Todd Buettner dropped the throw to the plate. 2 runs scored, and the Trojans were on their way. Another single scored the Trojans' 3rd run, and that finished Winfield. His successor, Bob Turnbull, yielded 3 singles, threw 2 passed balls, that's on the catcher, not him, and was charged with 3 runs and getting nobody out. Then Gordon Peterson comes in as the pitcher, another reliever. He inherits a 7-5 score and 2 base runners. He faced 3 hitters. The first singled, driving in a run. The second lofted a fly ball to deep right, tying the game. And then Marvin Cobb, a pinch runner, stole second, came home on Creighton Tevlin's single to center field. I mean, you want to talk about calamitous?
That's about as bad as it gets.
It's baseball. It's college baseball, and it's a long time ago, but that is about as bad as it gets. You're up 7-0 going into the bottom of the 9th inning, and you lose 8-7. How tempted would you have been? I don't know who the Gopher manager was at that point.
I bet it was Siebert.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it had to be
How
Siebert,
tempted do you think he was to say, bleep it, I'm keeping him out there. I don't care how many pitches he's thrown. I mean,
right.
Back then, was it routine in college to throw 165? I know they were well over 100.
Yeah, probably.
165. That was just going into the 9th. So obviously, by the end of that, I don't know what there's a Gopher box score somewhere. Maybe Dan Winnesota can find that. I want to thank him for finding his original Calendar of Calamity item when we passed that anniversary. What date did I say it was? June 12. 1973. That's a tough way to be eliminated in the College World Series, is it not?
Yeah. Now, they would have had more work to do, I think. I assume it was double elimination to win the College World Series. But USC, as you mentioned, they had they were the back-to-back defending champ. This title would be their 3rd.
That's true.
Then they won a 4th. I think they won 5 in a row in the 70s. I mean, it was the team of the decade.
Yeah.
Other local angle, Roy Smalley was a freshman on that team.
Is that right?
Because on that, and I think I knew that, but on the replies to Minnesota's original thing, somebody talked about Roy Smalley, and he hopped in, said, I was blessed to be a part of that team. That year, my first at USC was the 3rd title in a row. Won again the next year for 4. Freddie and I signed. After that, Richie Dower and Steve Kemp led them to 5 in a row the next year. Trojans, they could play some ball. Now they're in the Big Ten.
What does General Soreness mean? Too bad the Trojans had to cheat to win. CC Roy Smalley.
I'm assuming he's being sarcastic.
Oh, I thought was there like some later scandal we found out about that, like ineligible players being a part of that team?
Not sure.
Huh.
I'm surprised we didn't, because USC came here for Big Ten baseball this year. Did I miss it? I can't believe Royce didn't write about that.
I should have written it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he did and we didn't see it.
Yeah, that's possible, I suppose.
Very possible. I'm not sure. Man, that's...
Royce might have been there.
Well,
in 73.
73, I'm guessing he was covering the Twins, realistically. Because he wasn't writing... because I don't think he was writing a column then.
Okay.
I don't think.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But he might be right. I don't know. Yeah, I wonder at some point whether he has... we used to have Winfield on a decent amount. We haven't lately, but I don't remember ever talking to him about that game. Maybe we did and I forgot.
I was trying to figure out if it came up when you did the thing with him at Mancini.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
I don't think that it did.
I don't think it did either. It might have been a difficult subject, although you'd like to think enough time had passed by. Then at that point,
sometimes it doesn't, though.
Matter.
You'd be surprised. And Winfield had so many other things in his life. Yes. Obviously, he was a 3-sport drafted player. At least. I mean, maybe the best athlete that the state of Minnesota's ever had.
Well, somebody just texted that he is the best athlete in the history of the state of Minnesota, and it's not even close.
Like, that's just another day for Winfield.
That's true. He was astonishing.
He was so good. By the way, programming alert or on-air production meeting, we do, before training camp, after you get back, we do need to have Royce in for another hour.
That's true. That's a good idea.
Kind of the July Royce visit.
Yeah, you're right about that.
We'll ask him about this game.
That's not a bad idea for sure.
Siebert never even let us talk about it.
Here's the box score, but I don't think it lists
pitch count.
I don't see it.
I don't think anybody cared about pitch count back then. I don't think they thought to count it until maybe after the fact.
I think you're right about that. Here's interesting about the Winfield line. He struck out 15, but he walked 9.
A little erratic.
9 walks. That's a bunch.
Led to the pitch count getting high.
Ultimately was charged with giving up 4 runs and 4 hits. Yeah, Lynn played center for USC. Freddie Lynn batted third. He was 0 for 4 in that game. He scored 1 run, but he was 0 for 4. And as he said, through 8 innings, they had 1 hit in the ball game until all hell broke loose after that. Yeah, I don't see a pitch count. Attendance was 9,686 for the record. Texter guy, I think this was 612. Let me see if I can scroll down and find it here on the fly. Bear with me. Why must we relive this? It's actually from 952 guy. Well, it's because we're into the calendar of calamity, and this one's an underrated one. And how do we get back to it? College World Series. I was talking about College World Series for some reason.
Yeah, because it's on right now.
That's what I was looking at. Yeah, it's on right now. It looks like one of those, the Gophers, that game eliminated them from the College World Series. This is a so-called elimination game between Bozich's Louisville club and Oregon State.
The last time the Gophers
went. No, I doubt that he did because I don't think he's trailing anywhere these days.
The last great Gopher team played Oregon State in the 2019 Super Regional. They won the regional, I think, here, and then had to travel out to Corvallis to take on these Oregon State Beavers. Okay. Another great program.
Corvallis, yeah, that's not an easy.
I've been there.
Commute. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I've been there. We had to stay in Salem, Oregon.
That was for Gopher football.
Gopher football. PJ Fleck's first year, I think.
We haven't talked much Gopher football. Is overconfidence our only enemy? How are we looking? What are we hearing? I mean, I know, again, the recruiting stuff's encouraging, but we're back to, is it just because it's still relatively early? Or are we going to, at the end of the key recruiting periods, are we going to still end up in the top 20? Because I would say
right? Probably not, but I think they're going to have a nice class.
It's encouraging.
Yeah, I think they have a really nice class. It's all about the quarterback for this upcoming season.
And refresh my memory on that. We have an anointed one, or are we going to have a competition? No, it's okay.
I mean, they're saying there's a competition, right, but I don't think there is.
Okay.
I guess he'd be a redshirt freshman from Fayetteville, Arkansas.
So I think we viewed Brosmer was more of a passer than a runner. Is this guy more combo platter, or is he?
I don't think so. No,
more of a passer.
He's more of a passer.
Okay.
Yeah, he slings it. He throws it around.
So are we going to be committed to slinging it like we were a year ago with Brosmer?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. You can't forget about Darius Taylor, but he catches a lot of balls out of the backfield, so
true.
I would imagine that's a part of it, too. It's like 42 days until I go to Las Vegas for Big Ten Football Media Day.
That's where it is this year?
Yeah, baby.
Why is it in Vegas?
Why not? It's the new world.
My God.
Got to get closer to the West Coast
Geography
teams.
means nothing anymore, does
Well, there's 4 Big Ten teams that are close to Las Vegas. You got to throw them a bone.
Yeah, but none of them are based in Vegas.
And I assume Indy just got too big and for us.
They don't have time for that.
Indy doesn't have time for the Big Ten, we probably had to move on.
The overall hockey issue to me is the same as the baseball issue. Hockey's a winter sport, and it's too nice out to be in the house when the sun is up until 9:30. Baseball's a summer sport. You need to eliminate or greatly reduce the schedule in April when the weather is not good in many places and kids are in school. So weeknight games are out, and they should not be playing World Series games in November, shorten the seasons. Well, how many years have we heard this? They're just not going to do that.
50.
They're not going to shorten seasons. I don't. There's no movement for that. There's no. I get it, but again, there's too much money at stake. In a perfect world. In a perfect world, the NHL season would be 60 games, regular season. NBA regular season would be 60, right? 60.
Yeah, probably.
60 would be plenty. What would be plenty for baseball? I know the seam heads will say it's fine the way it is. You don't want to shorten it all. It's about the marathon, not sprint. Could you live with 140?
I think you could.
Probably could.
Yes.
Those would probably all be good changes. Now, the only sport where people do not in any way want it to be shortened is obviously the National Football League.
They're trying to get more.
I've guaranteed it before. I stand by it. Eventually, there will be a 20-game regular NFL season. I don't think there's any doubt about it. There will eventually, because aren't we already talking about, what are we on now, 18?
We have 17 now.
17.
They think 18's about to go.
Yeah, 18's coming, so I'm telling you, we're going to get to 20. Well, there'll be some changes made, maybe roster changes.
Second bye week.
Second or maybe even 3 bye weeks, for God's sake. And then that, of course, might take us into March. No one's going to complain about pro football in March, I'm telling you.
I do think they're going to match it up, because the other thing everybody always wants to talk about is the day after the Super Bowl should be a national holiday. Nobody wants to go to work on that Monday because they've all been drinking and eating at their Super Bowl party. So just figure out the schedule where the Super Bowl Sunday is President's Day weekend. Then you don't even have to declare
it makes sense.
A national holiday. You already have it. Seems too easy, doesn't it?
No, 100%. Yes, I agree totally.
Because that's only 2 weeks, or is it maybe even 1 week now?
Right.
The Super Bowl is usually like Feb 8, Feb 9. So you're only really talking about adding another week or so.
Do you know what today is? Today's the 17th of June, correct?
It's the 31st anniversary of OJ's Bronco.
Well, that's what I'm going to get to, because somebody reminds us of that subject. Ed is in St. Paul regarding a ESPN 30 for 30 for June 17, 1994. Film includes a remarkable day of events, including the World Cup opening in Chicago, Rangers Stanley Cup parade, Arnold Palmer's last round at the U.S. Open.
That's right.
The NBA Finals between Houston and New York, gun belt tight.
You were there, right?
I was there.
Yeah.
And commencing with the events surrounding the O.J. Simpson case and the white Bronco chase. I had forgotten about those other events being on that same day. That's a pretty remarkable sports day, is it not?
And that documentary is a fascinating one because if I remember correctly, and people can always correct us at the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line 64686, there's no narrator at all through the documentary. It's just footage.
Is that right? It's just straight footage?
It's just straight footage and of actual things that were broadcast, but also and it just takes you through the day, essentially. But there's no big voice guy. There's no Tom Selleck.
Interesting.
Taking you through.
Have you seen it?
Yeah. Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no Morgan Freeman guiding you through the bit, right? With a great voice. It's just...
They play it out.
Play it out, and you've got...
So they do it like by the clock?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
In real time?
Yeah. And they've got some great behind-the-scenes stuff of, like, Costas trying to figure out how they're going to set this whole thing up, because he's got to throw it back to Brokaw. He's at the Garden. He's got to throw it to 30 Rock because Tom Brokaw's got to break in and tell everybody what's going on with OJ.
Yeah.
And it's good, like, how the sausage is made back and forth of how he's trying to figure all that out. There's a million good parts of it.
From a media standpoint, what I remember about covering that NBA Finals is almost nobody in the media was courtside at their media spots because everybody wanted to be in the media room so they could monitor the chase.
Yeah.
It was mesmerizing. It was so tempting. It's like, we can kind of pay attention to the game back here because it's on monitors. And then on the other monitors, we can watch this incredibly bizarre scene play out in greater Los Angeles, California. It was such a strange backdrop. In fact, I know there's been interviews with the people who are doing play-by-play of the series, then kind of going like, well, what do I just narrate the game like I always do when really nobody's paying attention to this thing? Even half the people. Now, again, in the seats, people had to, because I don't think we had cell phones then, did we?
Not really. The beautiful people might have.
They might have, but so it wasn't like people could, if you're in your seats.
You weren't checking Twitter.
You could only check out, I guess, via, well, I don't know how you would check other than just updates from other people who were going to some sort of back room where there might have been a television. But that's where everybody wanted to be in front of a TV that day.
And I'm pretty sure they did do NBC.
They did a split deal.
Screen,
they did.
Right?
They absolutely did.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very, very true, Davey.
I was in Sioux Falls,
we should try to have on again. He said we could call him anytime. I don't know if he meant it.
Bob Costas? Well, what's coming up is the Taste for the Tour, so maybe he's helping out with that again.
Oh, that's a good point.
So that would be a good hook for us. It's in about a month.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be back by then, obviously.
Let's hope.
I'll be gone for like 6 weeks, according to you.
It took me a minute when you texted me that
to figure out the bit.
I'm like, what
does he mean?
I'm like, is he trying to steal a week without telling anybody?
Yeah.
Am I in on the secret? No.
Yeah. For the first time in like 30 years here, I'm taking a summer vacation. Who knew? There was
big news.
Apparently, it is
split screen.
There was some sort of controversial call that cost the Gophers an out in that 9th inning where the Dave Winfield game where they blew the big lead.
Yeah.
That's from General Soreness. I believe it led to Siebert being ejected, the Gopher manager or coach. That's what was behind my reference to USC cheating. Now, I didn't see evidence of that in the game story that I quoted from, but maybe it was covered in a sidebar. I don't know. That there was something controversial during, and you'd almost think there'd have to be, given, that's
a
hard.
Big lead to give up.
Did I say there were 2 outs or 1 when Winfield left? No, I think it was 1. Let me see. Let me double check here. Here's the box score. No, yeah, it must have been 1 out because he pitched 8 1/3. So it wasn't that they blew that 7-run lead with 2 outs, but he had 1 out before they started scoring runs. 8 runs in the bottom of the 9th inning. The Gophers had scored 5 in the 2nd. Let me see who the star was there. Winfield was 3 for 4.
Of course he was.
Drove in 1 run.
I think he went right to the major leagues.
He did. He went right to the Padres.
Yeah.
That's very, very true, David.
Jeez.
It's remarkable, is it not?
He probably doesn't get talked about enough, honestly.
No, you're right. And again, it's because he's been gone a long time.
Yeah.
That's what it amounts to. Yeah, I mean, as an athlete, a kid, it's unbelievable. Where else were we? I had another text I wanted to find here on the hockey situation, which we will discuss. We'll get back to certainly with Luigi. Fred Lynn, roommates with Lynn Swan. Can't imagine a better college roommate combo than that in terms of future success. I did not know that. Did you?
No. But it makes sense. USC.
Pitchers also threw 8 warm-up pitches between innings to further add to unofficial pitch counts. Max Meyer was their best pitcher. I guess they must be talking about the Gophers.
That's from 2019.
Oh, yeah. I see.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
If I read that correctly. Who's in the bigs right now?
Dan, we have Amazon Prime, which includes HBO Max and TNT, TBS. Maybe it's just our package. That's Dean from Hermantown. Happy for Dean from Hermantown. You want to play it?
Well, you got to give me a heads up.
Yeah, well, I didn't know. I didn't even realize it was coming.
Yeah, during the break, I got to have.
Dan, NBA, ESPN, Doris Burke. Can one person be the elephant in the room? If I tune in and hear her, I tune out.
Hermantown.
There it is. I guess I don't think it's a particularly compelling broadcast. I don't really put that just on her. I put it on the mix. I like the way Mitch Lawrence put it with us a couple of weeks ago that it shouldn't be a lead team. And I don't think it should be a lead team, to be honest with you. Now, I don't know that. I guess I'd still be surprised that people would literally turn it off as soon as. But I guess some people might. I don't know. And, I hope it's not because she's a woman. I fear, based on some of the texts we've gotten in recent weeks on this subject, that the answer is yes, which is sad. 2025, for God's sake. I mean, how many broadcasters are there that are male? 5 million?
We've got enough. We've got plenty.
But that doesn't mean you have to love her style either.
Of course not.
But I mean, just
because you don't like her doesn't mean
that you're sexist necessarily.
Right. Because there's that too.
Right.
That's where it's tricky sometimes.
That's true. I wonder what true numbers are for NBA or NHL finals would be if everyone pirating was included. Comcast forced me out a decade ago, and I'm never going back to the cord. Is that what we call it? The cord?
The cord, yeah.
So you're cutting the cord if you get out of all of that.
You know me, I'm Xfinity ride or die.
Yeah.
And always will be, whether I'm doing commercials for them or not.
I told you, I was the first person in the city of Minneapolis to get DirecTV.
I've seen the plaque at your house. I've seen the trophy they gave you.
I mean, it was a novelty then. And I remember the project of putting this little mini dish up and positioning it right.
It was a flex.
It
was a big flex back then, wasn't it?
It was exciting.
Of course it was.
Because for me, it was... They actually, one of the cool things they had is you're not going to get the local stations, but you are going to get affiliates. And they just picked them at random. I don't know if it was at random. So I want to say there was an independent out of San Francisco. There was an ABC station. It might have been out of New York. I don't remember. But for me, it was just kind of cool to get stations, local stations from other places. That's long gone, obviously, as an option. Because I want to say it was San Francisco was Channel 2. I want to say it was KTVU at the time, and it was just great to get local news from just a different feel. So because everything wasn't quite that generic. All right, let's do this. What time do we got? We got 4:56. So let's try to stay on time and prepare for the top 5 at 5. Louis is going to join at about 5:30, and we'll revisit a lot of the hockey discussions that we have been getting into. Top 5 will include what?
Twins and Lynx back in action, and Chris Finch, in studio with the Paul Allen Project. Did he say anything interesting? Come back and find out.